Thank you. Thank you very much. It's gonna be a great day again today. That's all I can say. I'm looking forward to getting together in person, but I really like these Zoom meetings, because I can still wear my fuzzy slippers and nobody even notices. Oh gosh. Okay, so I want you to raise your hand if you've ever been down that Wikipedia rabbit hole. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. It's like when you go to look up the state reptile of Arizona, and next thing you know, a couple of clicks later, you find out that New York actually has a protocol, a forum for picking up roadkill on your local roads. And then a couple more clicks later, you find out that the Levitt Institute was a fake organization created in 2009 solely for the purpose of successfully getting the Australian media to report that Sydney was Australia's most naive city. I know, it's like, I didn't know this stuff. How did I not know this? It's all stuff I'm not even interested in. But by golly, I love digging into it. And that's kind of the basis for my talk today. It's about curiosity. There's a study revealed that, not surprisingly to anyone who's ever raised a child, that 4-year-olds ask about 300 questions a day. 300. But did you know that by junior high school, it's just down to just about 0 a day? And by the time they get into high school, all of those interesting, exploratory, sometimes provocative questions that a 4-year-old can ask can become 2 things. Can I use the bathroom? And will this be on the test? The sad truth is curiosity is kind of beaten out of us once we get into the system, isn't it? Once we get to the system that socializes us, like churches, schools, work, it's really not considered a value in most areas. And because of this, as we get older, we learn 2 things, don't we? We learn, first of all, limit our curiosity to the more mundane, to the more practical things. And the second, which is more fundamental, is it's not our job to question, but to find out what other people in power, our parents, church leaders, teachers, or managers want from us. And as we become conditioned, we leave all of those curiosity questionings to them, and we forget to be curious ourselves. That doesn't apply to Cookie. I've never seen a more curious person, but I'll get to that in a minute. And when we get to this, when we're in this space of losing our curiosity, we become sheep. Yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. Remember that nursery rhyme? So curiosity is your superpower, and that's what I want to talk about today. It activates so many areas of your brain. In fact, researchers in the US have discovered that curiosity actually ramps up the dopamine activity in our brains. And this is one of the activities and one of the primary ways that strengthens our memory. And then a study of college students, a study of their brains found that stimulating their natural curiosity in any subject helped them to make better grades in subjects, even if they weren't particularly interested in them. That's really interesting. And yet another thing curiosity does is it deepens your connection to everything in your life. Years ago, I was visiting a friend of mine in Phoenix, and it was getting late. And so I told her, I'm getting tired, I'm gonna go home. And she said something that really struck me. And she said, you're not tired, you're just bored. And I said, no, I'm just tired. She said, you're bored. And that stayed with me, and I didn't get it for a long time. But then in the early 90s, I understood what she meant. When I was in Nashville, still a computer nerd, I ordered a genealogy program called Brother's Keeper. And it was one of those clunky old DOS programs. It arrived about 2 o'clock on a Friday, and by 3 o'clock I had installed it all the little discs, I got through the whole little disc process. And I was already starting to input information about my family. And so the more I learned about it, the more I read about my family, as I entered the data, I kept getting more and more engaged. It's like I was going down into a rabbit hole. And guess what happened? I completely lost track of time. And I mean, I completely lost track of time. I spent from 3 o'clock that afternoon on a Friday till 5 o'clock the next morning on a Saturday, combining all this information I had on the backs of pictures, in my mom's family Bible, on sheets of genealogy paper, because I had been LDS, and that's just what we did back in the day. And interestingly enough, and sometimes people don't believe me when I tell them this, but I swear to God it's true. I never once got up to stretch, to eat, to take a bathroom break, or even to get a drink of water, which is probably why I never got up to take a bathroom break. Nothing. For 14 hours. 15 if you consider the hour I spent loading things. But I do remember reaching up to flip on that light switch, because it was starting to get dark. So I can tell you, it wasn't even until 4 o'clock the next morning that I became aware that I was back into my body, so to speak. That curiosity was the fuel that kept my brain engaged and kept me awake. I wasn't tired because I wasn't bored. And I totally got what my friend Ellie said to me. I mean, how many times have you laid in bed? You're just on the brink of sleep, and all of a sudden you get some kind of inspiration. You get inspired to write that article or paint that picture, at least sketch it out so you remember it the next morning. Or you remember where you left something. You thought you'd thrown it away, but you remember what you did with it. How many times? I do that lots of times. Because when I'm getting into bed, I'm starting to get back into my body and relaxing and not being stressed from the day. And it's an exciting thing. All of a sudden, I'm good for another 2-3 hours. Sometimes it drives me crazy, but okay, I'm okay with that now. The point is, as we get older, maybe it's not our life force energy that we're losing. Maybe it's our curiosity. If our mind's excited to learn about something, it doesn't matter if it's going to turn into our future PhD or going to get us a promotion. It only matters that we're learning. But as a spiritual leader, one of my related interests is discovering more about what brings us together spiritually and emotionally. What is the thread that connects us? What is that thread that connects our humanity? What is that? The question led me to learning that depending on who you talk to, there are 20 or more religions, world religions, and those are religions that are in more than one country and more than one continent. And there's just hundreds of belief systems. So I asked, I don't even know why I thought about this. I guess because my aunt is Episcopalian, but I decided I wanted to ask Wikipedia, when did the Episcopal Church split from the Catholic Church? Simple question, right? I just love this kind of stuff. I don't need to know it. It's trivia, but I do really well on Jeopardy, I have to say. But it's just stuff I like to learn. So I found out the Anglican Church originated when King Henry VIII split from the Roman Catholic Church in 1534 because the Pope refused to grant him an annulment from one of his wives. And from there, the Anglican Church became the Anglican Communion, which is made up of about 40 independent churches across the world, one of which is the U.S. Episcopalian. So then I asked, what's the Episcopalian Church have in common with the Catholic Church now? To my surprise, I found out that the Episcopal Church is often referred to as the middle way because it contains elements of both the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches. Who knew? I know you just were waiting to hear about that. I didn't know why I wanted to know that, I just did. But how can you be curious about something when you don't even know it exists? Glad you asked that. Because in the coming weeks and months, and hopefully even beyond, I'll be working with our board of directors that we call council to present speakers from religions, practices, ideas and writings that you may or may not be familiar with. And this is not in any way, shape, or form to change your mind. You all know me better than that. It's not to lead you into anything, but to simply ask you to use your curiosity to weave that thread of humanity back into all our lives. How can we claim to be one humanity when we only know one little teeny bit of it? So let's shorten that gap between what we don't know and what we do know. And I was thinking about, when I was still on the subject of religions, I was thinking about our Egyptian Sufi friend, Farrakh Hawash. And that led me to thinking about the Sufi, just don't even ask me because I just don't know sometimes, but it led me to look at the Sufi whirling dervishes. You know what those are, don't you? You know, or who they are. So they're Sufi and they do these wonderful whirling dances, but I had no idea what that was about. So they wear those tall conical hats made of felt with big white robes. Well, not big white, but nice white robes with full skirts covered with a big black cloak. And then they whirl in a beautiful, graceful dance around the floor and whirl. How they don't get sick and puke, I don't know, but it's beautiful. And I knew nothing about it. So down the rabbit hole I went once more. So the hats symbolize the tombstones of their egos. The white robes symbolize a person's shroud, but the cloak represents the worldly life. So when the dervish cast it off as part of the whirling ceremony, it means he's turning his back on the world in order to get closer to God. Fascinating. So how do we discover those things? How do we discover the best way to connect with not only the divine, but our environment, ourselves, and how do we do that? Curiosity. So here's a few things you can do to stimulate your own curiosity. And the best place to begin is with the people in your own life. And I only bring all of this up because I know most of us are, how should we say, of an age that we are getting older. And if nothing else, the last, what does they say in Star Trek? It's the last frontier to go is our mind. So why not keep it as sharp and interesting as possible? Because when you're interesting, people want to be around you. So this first one is one I'm really working on because it's just one thing I'm working on. I need to. But that is to listen without judgment. There's all kinds of judgments when you're working with people, when you're talking to them especially. And one type of judgment might be when you try to fix them. It's just not your work. You might be assuming something that isn't true. So you might start to say, well, if I were you, or you need to try this. But before you do that, I'm asking you to do one of two things. Either run to the nearest horse trough and dunk your head, or just say, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. I don't know, sometimes that horse trough sounds pretty refreshing, but stay curious and allow them their moment. Sometimes people just need that time to be heard. They need that time to find their own answers because that's the only place their true answers exist. Number 2, live life in discovery mode, not on autopilot. I did that for years. It's not near as much fun as it is now. But honestly, for all of my life experiences, there's so much more I want to know. Why are they called freshmen? What do they call second year high school sophomores? Why is it called football in Europe and soccer in the United States? And why, for God's sakes, is a rugby football called a Gilbert? These are things I want to get to the bottom of. I have plenty to do, but these are important things to find out for me. They're perplexing. I have to know. So look for things to be curious about. When you're doing your gratitude work, it's really nice when you say, I'm so grateful for my wonderful friends, but how well do you really know them? Really? I mean, do you know that your friend had Lyme disease 15 years ago and it still causes her problems? Pray for her. Pray for her. What do you know about them? Start asking questions, and I guarantee it'll open up a whole new world and a whole new depth to your gratitude work. And then engage in questions that begin dialogues. When you interact with others, ask questions. Better yet, ask broad, open-ended questions. What if? What do you think about? Where do you think I could take this idea? Even the simplest questions can open up a wonderful conversation. When people ask me questions, I'm flattered. It tells me they want to know more about me, and in turn, I actually feel like I'm interesting, right? I used to get told that I was too nosy and I would ask too many questions. And I disagreed. I figured if people didn't want to answer, they would tell me, I don't want to answer, you asked too many questions. But I figure it's worth me asking to find out about them. People are interesting, and I find the more questions I ask, the more interesting other people become. So isn't it worth it to make somebody feel like they're interesting? And you might find out you just have some things in common, like, I don't know, maybe you both dreamed about finishing your BA in 17th century French literature. Who knows? Or maybe you both contemplated starting a book club so you can discuss, theorize, question, and investigate new ideas in each book. Whatever it is, it gives you an incredible opportunity to hear their dreams and goals and be present enough to encourage them. You might just be that one person that convinces them that it's possible. Remember the oft-quoted words by Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And you all make me feel very special. I love you. Thank you so much.